The intersection of musical genres often leads to fascinating conversations about influence, inspiration, and artistic evolution. One such intersection involves two seemingly disparate acts: Slayer, the iconic thrash metal titans, and Nirvana, the band that defined the grunge movement and reshaped the landscape of rock music in the 1990s. While their sounds and aesthetics were worlds apart, the connection between Slayer and Nirvana has been a topic of discussion among fans and critics alike. Specifically, the question of whether Slayer influenced Nirvana and what Kurt Cobain, Nirvana's frontman and creative force, truly thought of Slayer, has sparked curiosity and debate. This article delves into the relationship between these two bands, exploring the extent to which Slayer may have influenced Nirvana, while also examining Kurt Cobain's thoughts on thrash metal and its pioneers. By analyzing interviews, musical elements, and the broader cultural context of the time, we can better understand the nuanced dynamics between these two influential acts. At first glance, Slayer and Nirvana appear to occupy entirely different musical universes. Slayer, formed in 1981 in Huntington Park, California, is one of the big four bands of thrash metal alongside Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax. Known for their blistering speed, aggressive guitar riffs, and dark, often controversial lyrics, Slayer became synonymous with the extreme end of heavy metal. Albums like Rain and Blood, 1986, and South of Heaven, 1988, are considered classics of the genre, cementing their legacy as pioneers of thrash and extreme metal. Nirvana, on the other hand, emerged from the Pacific Northwest in the late 1980s and early 1990s, becoming the poster child for the grunge movement. With their breakthrough album Nevermind, 1991, Nirvana brought alternative rock into the mainstream, combining raw, punk-inspired energy with melodic sensibilities. Kurt Cobain's songwriting, characterized by its emotional depth and introspective lyrics, resonated with a generation, making Nirvana one of the most influential bands of the 20th century. Despite their differences, both bands shared a commitment to authenticity and a disdain for the commercialism and excesses of mainstream rock. This shared ethos may have created a subtle, if unexpected, connection between them. The idea that Slayer influenced Nirvana might seem far-fetched to some, given the stark contrast in their musical styles. However, the influence of metal on Nirvana, and on Kurt Cobain in particular, has been well documented. Cobain's early musical tastes were shaped by a wide range of genres, including punk rock, classic rock, and, yes, heavy metal. In his teenage years, Cobain was a fan of bands like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Kiss, all of whom laid the groundwork for heavy metal. He also expressed admiration for more aggressive acts like the Melvins, a sludge metal band that played a significant role in shaping the sound of grunge. While Cobain's taste leaned more toward punk and alternative rock as he matured, his appreciation for metal never entirely disappeared. So, where does Slayer fit into this picture? While there is no direct evidence that Slayer had a profound influence on Nirvana's music, there are a few points of connection worth exploring. Shared roots in the underground scene. Both Slayer and Nirvana emerged from underground music scenes that valued authenticity and rebellion against mainstream norms. Slayer's uncompromising approach to thrash metal resonated with the DIY ethos of punk, which was a major influence on Nirvana. This shared spirit of defiance may have created a sense of kinship between the two bands, even if their sounds diverged. Cobain's appreciation for heavy music. While Cobain was critical of many aspects of metal culture, he did not dismiss the genre entirely. In interviews, he acknowledged the power and intensity of heavy music, even if it wasn't his primary focus. Slayer's ferocity and technical prowess likely earned them a degree of respect from Cobain, even if he didn't cite them as a direct influence. The influence of the Melvins, who were close friends and mentors to Cobain, bridged the gap between punk and metal. Their slow, heavy sound drew from both genres, and they were known to appreciate bands like Slayer. It's possible that Cobain's exposure to the Melvins' music indirectly connected him to the world of thrash metal, including Slayer. Nirvana's heavier moments. While Nirvana is best known for their melodic alt-rock hits, they also had a heavier, more abrasive side. Songs like Tourette's and Scentless Apprentice from In Utero, 1993, showcase a raw, aggressive energy that could be seen as a nod to metal influences. While these moments are more rooted in punk than thrash, they demonstrate that Nirvana was capable of tapping into a similar intensity. To understand the relationship between Slayer and Nirvana, it's essential to examine Kurt Cobain's views on thrash metal and its leading figures. Cobain was famously critical of the excesses and machismo associated with mainstream metal, particularly the glam metal bands that dominated the 1980s. However, his feelings about thrash metal were more nuanced. In a 1991 interview with Rolling Stone, Cobain expressed his disdain for the cock rock bands of the era, but he also acknowledged that there were exceptions within the metal genre. He cited bands like Black Sabbath and the Melvins as examples of metal acts he respected, praising their authenticity and musical innovation. While he didn't mention Slayer by name in this interview, his openness to certain metal bands suggests that he didn't dismiss the genre outright. Cobain's relationship with metal was further explored in his journals, which were published posthumously. In these writings, he reflected on his musical influences and the evolution of his tastes. While he often criticized the superficiality of mainstream metal, he also expressed admiration for the raw power and technical skill of bands like Metallica. Given Slayer's status as one of the most respected and technically proficient thrash metal bands, it's reasonable to assume that Cobain held them in a similar regard. However, Cobain's primary allegiance was always to punk rock, which he saw as a more authentic and socially conscious form of expression. In a 1993 interview with The Advocate, he stated, "I don't know if I could ever stomach being a metal band. I'd rather be a punk band any day." This sentiment underscores the fact that while Cobain may have appreciated certain aspects of metal, he ultimately identified more closely with punk and alternative rock. To fully grasp the relationship between Slayer and Nirvana, it's important to consider the broader cultural context of the late 1980s and early 1990s. Thrash metal and grunge emerged from different musical traditions, but both were reactions against the perceived superficiality of mainstream rock. Thrash metal, with its aggressive sound and dark themes, represented a rebellion against the polished, radio-friendly glam metal of the 1980s. Bands like Slayer sought to push the boundaries of heavy music, both musically and lyrically, creating a sound that was uncompromising and confrontational. Grunge, on the other hand, was rooted in the punk and indie rock scenes of the Pacific Northwest. Bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam rejected the excesses of mainstream rock in favor of a more raw and introspective approach. While grunge shared some of punk's anti-establishment ethos, it also incorporated elements of metal, creating a hybrid sound that appealed to a wide audience. Despite their differences, both thrash metal and grunge were part of a larger movement to challenge the status quo of rock music. This shared spirit of rebellion may have created a sense of mutual respect between bands like Slayer and Nirvana, even if their musical paths diverged. The question of whether Slayer influenced Nirvana is ultimately a complex one. While there is no direct evidence that Slayer played a significant role in shaping Nirvana's sound, the two bands were connected by their shared commitment to authenticity and their rejection of mainstream norms. Kurt Cobain's appreciation for heavy music, combined with his respect for bands that pushed boundaries, suggests that he may have viewed Slayer as kindred spirits, even if their musical styles were vastly different. In the end, the relationship between Slayer and Nirvana serves as a reminder of the fluidity of musical influence. While their sounds may have been worlds apart, their shared ethos and rebellious spirit created a subtle, if unexpected, connection. As fans of both bands continue to explore their legacies, the conversation about their influence on each other and on the broader landscape of rock music will undoubtedly continue.